Susan Parker adjusted the collar of her ceremonial uniform as she waited outside the grand chamber of the Vespid Collective. The blue piping along her dark jacket marked her as part of the elite human diplomatic security force. Susan still could not believe she had been selected for this assignment. Guarding Queen Zixara of the Vespids, the most powerful alien monarch in the known galaxy. Massive insectoid guards flanked the doorway, their compound eyes reflecting the amber light of the corridor. Their mandibles clicked softly as they communicated in their native language. The universal translators at their throats remained silent as they deliberately excluded the human from their conversation. Susan maintained her professional stance, betraying none of the anxiety she felt. The peace between humans and Vespids was barely 6 months old following decades of tense standoffs in disputed star systems. Her assignment was more than security. It was a symbol of trust between species. The enormous doors slid open with a soft hiss, releasing a wave of sweet pollen scent that made Susan suppress a sneeze. She had been briefed about the Vespid royal pheromones, but experiencing them firsthand was different. "Enter human guard." The translator voice was flat, but the clicking sounds behind it carried tones Susan was learning to recognize as impatience. Susan stepped into the royal chamber and immediately felt small. The ceiling soared nearly 30 feet high, with bioluminescent panels casting a golden glow across the chamber. The walls were a combination of advanced technology and organic material, typical of Vespid architecture. Queen Zixara waited in the center of the room, perched on what humans called her throne, though it was more of a specialized molting platform. The queen stood nearly 8 feet tall, her iridescent exoskeleton shifting colors in complex patterns that conveyed emotion to other Vespids. Her delicate wings folded against her back, shimmered like gossamer. "You are the human chosen for royal protection." The queen's mandibles moved as the translator at her throat converted the sounds into English. "Yes, your majesty." Susan bowed in the manner she had been taught, keeping her eyes down for precisely 3 seconds. Before looking up, "I am honored to serve." The queen stepped down from her platform, moving with surprising grace for her size. She circled Susan, examining her from every angle. Her compound eyes reflected Susan in thousands of tiny facets. "You are smaller than the previous human representatives." Her voice clicked through the translator. "But I am told your combat ratings exceed theirs." Susan remained still during the inspection. "I specialize in close protection tactics. Your Majesty's size can be an advantage when opponents underestimate you." The queen's color patterns shifted briefly to a purple hue that Susan had not seen before. "Is that a human saying something like that?" Susan replied, careful to keep her tone respectful. The queen made a sound that the translator did not convert, but Susan recognized as the Vespid equivalent of contemplation. The monarch completed her circle and returned to her platform for 10 standard cycles. "You will be my shadow human. You will learn our ways as we learn yours. The treaty between our species hangs by a fragile thread. We must strengthen it or watch it break." "I understand, your majesty," Susan replied. The significance of her assignment weighed heavily on her shoulders. The fate of 2 species might well depend on how successfully she performed her duties. The following days established a routine. Susan shadowed the queen through various chambers of the massive hive ship, learning the complex social structure of Vespid society. The worker caste maintained the ship systems while the soldier caste provided security. The specialized breeder caste tended to the nursery chambers where thousands of eggs developed in carefully controlled conditions. Susan observed how the queen interacted differently with each caste, her color patterns shifting subtly to convey authority, nurturing, or command. The human guard found herself fascinated by the elegant efficiency of Vespid society, so different from the often chaotic human political systems. On the 7th day, Queen Zixara summoned Susan to her private chamber, a rare honor even for her personal guard. The room was smaller than the throne room, with walls lined with strange crystalline structures that hummed faintly. The queen stood before a holographic display showing star maps of both human and Vespid territories. "You have been watching me carefully, human." Her translator clicked. "I am your guard, your majesty." Susan replied diplomatically. "It is my duty to observe, but you watch with more than your Eyes. The Queen turned her massive head. The patterns on her exoskeleton pulsed with amber and blue. You watch with curiosity, not just vigilance. That is unusual for a soldier. Susan considered her response carefully. I believe understanding your people helps me protect you better, and perhaps helps strengthen the peace between our species. The Queen made a soft trilling sound that the translator did not convert, but Susan had come to recognize as approval. You speak wisely for a species so young. Before Susan could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the chamber. The Queen's color patterns instantly shifted to alert red, her wings extending slightly. Her personal communicator buzzed with urgent clicks. What is happening, Your Majesty? Susan asked her, hand moving instinctively to the ceremonial staff that concealed her advanced weapons. Unauthorized ship approaching. The Queen replied, her mandibles clicking rapidly. Our outer patrols report. It bears human markings but does not respond to hail. Susan felt her stomach tighten. This could unravel everything: the peace treaty, the cultural exchange, the fragile trust they had built. Is it possible its communications are damaged? The Queen studied Susan, her compound eyes unreadable. Perhaps, but our sensors detect weapons powering up. The implications were clear. Either rogue humans were attacking or someone wanted to make it appear that way. Either scenario threatened to destroy the peace between their species. I request permission to contact Earth Command, Susan said firmly. They can verify if this is a registered human vessel. The Queen hesitated, her color shifting between red and purple. Before she could respond, the entire ship shuddered as something impacted the outer hull. We are under attack. The Queen's voice was cold now, all trace of warmth gone. Your humans have betrayed our trust. No, Susan insisted, stepping forward. That ship does not represent Earth. Please let me help identify it. The Queen regarded Susan for a long moment, while another impact rocked the ship. Finally, she gestured to a communication panel. Very well, human. You have one chance to prove your words. Susan knew in that moment that everything depended on what she did next. The fate of two species hung in the balance as she stepped toward the communications array, her mind racing to understand who would want to destroy the peace they had worked so hard to build. Susan worked quickly at the alien console, her fingers dancing across the unfamiliar controls. The Vespid ship shuddered again as another impact struck the hull. She had to convince both sides this was not what it appeared to be. Earth Command, this is Security Specialist Susan Parker aboard the Vespid royal vessel. She transmitted using her diplomatic security clearance codes. We have an unidentified ship attacking us bearing what appear to be human markings. Request immediate verification and assistance. The Queen's color patterns pulsed with agitation, her massive form looming over Susan. If this is human deception, it is not, Your Majesty. Susan assured her, though she could not be certain herself. Pirates sometimes used stolen human vessels, or it could be a false flag operation by those who opposed the peace treaty. The communication array crackled to life. Specialist Parker, this is Earth Command. Captain Laura Winters responding. We show no authorized human vessels in your sector. Attacking ship is not one of ours. Repeat, not one of ours. Relief flooded through Susan, but it was short-lived. The ship rocked more violently, and warning lights flashed across the Vespid control panels. They target our propulsion systems. A Vespid officer reported, his mandibles clicking rapidly. The Queen turned to Susan, her compound eyes reflecting the emergency lights. Your people deny responsibility, yet we are attacked by a human ship. Susan thought quickly. My Queen, with respect, this benefits neither of our species. The peace treaty has advantages for both humans and Vespids. Someone else wants to destroy what we have built. The ship lurched suddenly, throwing Susan against the wall. She recovered quickly, noticing the Queen's color patterns had shifted to a deep blue she had never seen before. Your Majesty, we should move you to a secure location, Susan suggested. The bridge is too exposed. The Queen considered this, her antennae twitching slightly. As she was about to respond, a Vespid commander rushed into the chamber, his exoskeleton bearing the marks of battle. My Queen, We have identified the attacking vessel. He clicked rapidly. The universal translator struggling to keep pace. It matches records of a human mining ship reported stolen 3 lunar cycles ago, but its weapons are not human design. Susan processed this information. Someone had taken a human ship and upgraded its weapons specifically for this attack. Who would benefit from war between humans and Vespids? The Krell, Susan, whispered the reptilian species from the Cygnus sector, had opposed the human-Vespid alliance from the beginning, fearing the combined power of both civilizations. What did you say? Human? The Queen demanded her translator, clicking sharply. The Krell. Your Majesty, Susan explained. They opposed our treaty negotiations. They have the technical capability to modify a stolen human vessel, and they have everything to gain if our species return to war. Another impact rocked the ship more violently than before. The lights flickered and gravity wavered momentarily. We lose primary power systems. A Vespid technician reported. Secondary systems engaging. We must move now, Your Majesty. Susan insisted. This time the Queen did not argue. She followed as Susan led the way toward the inner chambers of the massive ship where the royal safe room was located. They hurried through the curved corridors, Vespid guards forming a protective formation around their queen. Susan stayed close, her senses alert for any threat. The ship continued to shudder under the assault warning klaxons echoing through the passageways. As they rounded a corner, an explosion tore through the hull ahead of them. The decompression blast threw Susan and the Queen against the wall. A security barrier slammed down automatically, sealing off the breached section. But they were now cut off from their destination. Susan helped the Queen regain her footing. We need an alternate route. The Queen's color patterns had stabilized, showing remarkable calm despite the crisis. There is another way through the nursery chambers. The nursery, Susan knew, contained thousands of Vespid eggs, the future of their species. It was rarely accessed by non-Vespids. The Queen was showing unprecedented trust. They redirected their path, the remaining guards forming a tight perimeter. Deeper into the ship they encountered less damage but more panicked worker Vespids rushing to emergency stations. The Queen emitted a series of clicks and whistles that needed no translation, her presence calming her subjects. The nursery chamber doors parted, revealing a vast space filled with honeycomb structures. Each hexagonal cell contained a glowing egg, maintained at precise temperature and humidity. The sight took Susan's breath away. We must pass through quickly, the Queen instructed. This environment is delicately balanced. As they moved through the chamber, Susan noticed something strange about a section of eggs near the far wall. Their glow pulsed, irregularly, unlike the steady light of the others. She slowed her pace, studying them carefully. Your Majesty, she said, pointing to the anomalous eggs. Something is wrong. The Queen approached, her antennae extending toward the eggs. Her color patterns shifted to alarm. These eggs are dying. She clicked her translator, unable to fully convey the distress in her natural voice. But how? The systems show no malfunction. Susan examined the environmental controls for that section. The readings appeared normal, but something nagged at her trained instincts. She pulled out her personal scanner, a standard tool for diplomatic security personnel may. Your Majesty, she asked, gesturing toward the eggs. The Queen hesitated, then nodded. Permission. Granted, Susan ran her scanner over the affected section. The device was calibrated to detect a wide range of threats from biological agents to radiation. What it found surprised her. Ultrasonic waves, she said. Studying the readout, someone has placed a device emitting a frequency harmful to Vespid embryos but undetectable to your systems. The Queen moved closer, her massive form radiating anger, where Susan followed the scanner readings to a small maintenance panel. Nearly invisible to the naked eye, a disc-shaped object clung to the underside of the environmental control unit. Its design was neither human nor Vespid sabotage. The Queen hissed, her color patterns flashing with rage. The attack outside is a distraction. The true target is our future. Susan carefully documented the device with her scanner before addressing the Queen. Your Majesty, this confirms outside involvement. This device is not of human manufacture. The technology appears similar to Krell design. We need to alert both our governments before the Queen could respond. The ship rocked with the most violent impact yet. Lights failed completely before emergency systems engaged, bathing the nursery in an eerie red glow. We must reach the communication center. The Queen decided. We will broadcast evidence of this treachery to both our worlds as they left the nursery. Susan noticed the Queen's movements had changed. The monarch moved with new purpose, her color patterns showing determination. Susan realized that finding the sabotage device had changed everything. What had begun as a potential war between species had become a shared threat against a common enemy. They pressed forward through the damaged ship, uncertain what further dangers awaited but united in purpose. Human and Vespid, working together to expose the truth before it was too late. The journey to the communication center proved more challenging than anticipated. The attacking ship had targeted key systems throughout the Vespid vessel, creating chaos and confusion. Susan and the Queen encountered damaged sections, sealed emergency bulkheads, and groups of disoriented worker. Vespid's Queen Zixara maintained remarkable composure, her color pattern steady as she issued orders to her subjects. The sight of their monarch moved through the ranks like a wave, restoring order and purpose. Susan watched with admiration at how effectively the Queen managed the crisis. The communication center lay 3 levels below their current position. The main lifts were non-functional, forcing them to use maintenance tunnels normally restricted to worker caste Vespids. These passages are not meant for one of my size, the Queen explained as she folded her wings tightly against her back. But necessity demands adaptation. Susan went first, her compact human frame more suited to the narrow tunnels. She helped guide the Queen through particularly tight sections. The Vespid guards following behind clicked their mandibles in what Susan recognized as concern for their monarch's dignity. As they descended, Susan noticed something odd about the damage pattern throughout the ship. The attack seemed precisely targeted at systems that would create maximum confusion while minimizing casualties. Your Majesty, she said, pausing at a junction. I believe the attackers want the ship disabled, not destroyed. They could have targeted life support or the central hive chambers, but they didn't. The Queen considered this, her antennae quivering slightly. You believe they seek to board us. It fits the pattern, Susan confirmed. If the Krell want to frame humans for attacking Vespids, they would need more than just firing on your ship. They would need evidence, something concrete to drive our species apart. What evidence would satisfy such a purpose? The Queen's translator clicked with curiosity. Susan thought, carefully, a human boarding party captured on your security systems. Sabotage that could only be performed by human hands. Data cores showing falsified human attack plans. The Queen's color patterns shifted to a deep purple that Susan had come to recognize as serious contemplation. The implications are disturbing, but it would explain the attacker's strategy. They reached the end of the maintenance shaft, emerging into a corridor near the communication center. The passageway showed signs of battle. Vespid soldiers stood guard, their natural weapons extended. Susan noted with concern that several bore injuries. Report, the Queen demanded. Commander Vrydik stepped forward, his exoskeleton bearing scorch marks. Boarding parties have breached levels 5 and 7, Your Majesty. They wear what appear to be human combat suits, but their movements are not human. Susan finished studying the security feed on a nearby monitor. The way they move is all wrong. Humans have different joint structures, different balance points. These are imposters. The Queen moved closer to the screen, her compound eyes reflecting the images. Their deception is convincing enough to fool distant sensors, she clicked. But you detected the difference immediately. Susan nodded. When you observe something every day, you notice when its imitation isn't quite right. The same way you would instantly recognize a false Vespid Queen, while others might be fooled. The Queen made a sound that the translator did not convert, but which Susan had learned. Indicated agreement. We must reach the communication center and alert both our governments to this deception. They proceeded down the corridor, Vespid guards forming a protective formation around their queen and the human guard, the communication center doors had been sealed during the initial attack, requiring the queen's personal codes to access. Inside technicians worked frantically to restore connections to the Vespid homeworld and Earth Command. The main view screen showed the attacking vessel still circling, firing periodic bursts to maintain the illusion of conflict status report. The Queen demanded. Communications Officer Zith turned from his console. Main transmitters are damaged. Your Majesty, we can broadcast only short range. We cannot reach Homeworld or Earth Command. Susan stepped forward. We don't need to reach them directly, she said. Just the nearest relay station. Either human or Vespid. Once we transmit the evidence of sabotage and false boarding parties, the relay will forward to both governments. The communications officer clicked uncertainly. We can perhaps reach the human outpost on Proxima Station, but the transmission would be intercepted by the attacking vessel. Good, Susan said. That works in our favor. Queen turned to her compound eyes reflecting curiosity. Explain. Human. Susan gestured to the tactical display. If they intercept our transmission, it confirms they don't want this evidence reaching either government. They will move to stop us, which proves they aren't following official orders from either species. The Queen considered this, her color patterns shifting to what Susan now recognized as approval. Clever. But how does this help our immediate situation? It forces them to expose themselves. Susan explained. We broadcast on an open channel, making it clear we're transmitting evidence of the true attacker's identity. They'll have to take direct action against the communication center. You propose to use us as bait. The Queen stated. Susan nodded. With respect, Your Majesty. Yes, the false attackers want to destroy the peace between our species. They may believe they have succeeded. We can use that confidence against them. The Queen turned to her officers. Prepare the evidence transmission. Include all sensor data of the sabotage device from the nursery, and visual confirmation that the boarding parties are not human. The Queen then addressed Susan directly. You will assist in identifying these non-human characteristics for the record. Susan worked with the Vespid technicians compiling the evidence. The scanner data clearly showed the sabotage device was of Krell manufacture. The security footage of the boarding parties, when analyzed frame by frame, revealed subtle but unmistakable non-human movements. Their suit helmets carefully obscured facial features, but body proportions were slightly wrong. Limb movements too fluid for human joints. The transmission package was prepared within minutes. The communications officer looked to his Queen for final authorization. The Queen turned to Susan one last time. This action may bring direct attack upon this chamber. Are you prepared for the consequences? Susan straightened to attention, meeting the Queen's compound gaze. Protecting the peace between our species is my duty. Your Majesty, I am prepared. The Queen's color patterns shifted to a brilliant gold that Susan had never seen before. Proceed with transmission, she ordered. The message began broadcasting on all frequencies deliberately, unsecured so the attacking vessel would detect it immediately. On the tactical display, the enemy ship changed course, breaking its attack pattern and moving directly toward the communication center section. They have taken the bait, Susan confirmed. The false human attackers now moved with clear purpose, all pretense abandoned. They would attempt to destroy the evidence before it could reach either government. Weapons batteries to full power. The Queen ordered defensive positions. All non-essential personnel evacuate this section. As Vespid soldiers took positions around the communication center, Susan moved closer to the Queen. Their shared gambit had worked, but now they faced a direct assault. Susan checked her concealed weapon, knowing that the next minutes would determine whether peace survived or war between species would engulf the galaxy. The attack came swiftly. Explosions rocked the hull near the communication center. The Vespid ship automatically sealed surrounding compartments as warning klaxons blared throughout the vessel transmission status. Susan demanded maintaining her position, near the Queen officer. Zith clicked rapidly at his console. 60% complete. Estimate 3 minutes until full package reaches Proxima Relay. We may not have 3 minutes, Susan said as the tactical display showed multiple breaches forming. In adjacent sections, the fake human boarding parties were cutting through the ship's outer hull with remarkable efficiency. Your Majesty, Susan addressed the Queen. We should move you to a more secure location. The Queen stood tall, her color patterns displaying resolve. My place is here. This deception threatens both our species. I will not retreat. Susan recognized the Queen's determination and nodded respectfully. Then we prepare for direct confrontation. The Vespid soldiers positioned themselves. At key defensive points, their natural weapons extended. Susan drew her ceremonial staff, pressing a hidden switch that transformed it into an advanced combat weapon. The diplomatic security force had equipped her with non-lethal options, specifically designed to incapacitate without killing, a sign of respect for the peace treaty. Commander Vredix approached the Queen, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Boarding parties have breached Level 4. Your Majesty, they will reach this position within minutes. Queen turned to Susan. What do you suggest, human? You have combat experience against these Krell before. Susan had indeed fought Krell forces during the border skirmishes before the human-Vespid treaty. They have tough hide armor, she explained. But they have a weakness at the joint sections between their natural plates. Aim for those areas, particularly at the neck and under the arms. The Queen relayed this information to her soldiers, who adjusted their weapons accordingly. Susan was struck by how readily the Queen accepted her tactical advice. A true leader recognized expertise regardless of species. The ship shuddered violently as another explosion struck nearby. Lights flickered momentarily before stabilizing. Transmission, 80%. Complete, Officer Zith reported. Just over 1 minute remaining. The sound of cutting tools grew louder from the corridor outside. The false human attackers were through the outer hull and now working on the reinforced doors to the communication center. Susan moved to a position with clear sight lines to the main entrance. Her weapon hummed with energy as she adjusted the settings for maximum effectiveness against Krell physiology. The Vespid soldiers clicked to each other in their native language, arranging themselves in defensive formations. Your species fights well, the Queen observed from her position at the command platform. I have studied the records of human Krell conflicts. Susan nodded appreciatively. We had to adapt quickly when they first attacked our colonies. They underestimated us because of our size, just as they underestimate the strength of our alliance now. The Queen's color patterns shifted briefly to what Susan now recognized as agreement. That is their fundamental error. They believe our differences make us weak when in truth they make us strong. The doors to the communication center began to glow red as cutting tools worked their way through the reinforced metal. The Vespid soldiers raised their weapons. Susan steadied her breathing, focusing her mind as she had been trained. The next few moments would determine the fate of interspecies. Peace transmission complete. Officer Zith announced. Proxima Relay confirms receipt and forwarding to both Earth Command and Vespid Homeworld. Cheer went up from the Vespid technicians, their mandibles clicking rapidly in celebration. But Susan knew their task was not complete. The false attackers would still try to eliminate witnesses and evidence. The door exploded inward in a shower of molten metal and smoke. Through the breach came figures in what appeared to be human combat armor. Their movements confirmed Susan's earlier observation. These were not humans, but Krell disguised to implicate humanity in the attack. The lead attacker raised a weapon toward the Queen. Susan reacted instantly, firing a precise shot that struck the figure at the neck joint where the helmet met the body armor. The attacker fell writhing as its disguise malfunctioned, revealing glimpses of scaled skin beneath. The Vespid soldiers engaged with disciplined precision, following Susan's advice about targeting joint sections. The attackers found themselves facing a coordinated defense that exploited their weaknesses. Despite their superior numbers, the false boarding party struggled to advance into the chamber. Susan moved constantly, providing covering fire, while working her way closer to the Queen. The monarch's safety remained her primary concern. 3 attackers broke through the defensive line, heading directly for the command platform. Susan intercepted them, her weapon firing in rapid succession. 2 fell immediately, but the third reached the platform, lunging toward the Queen. Susan threw herself forward, tackling the attacker. They crashed to the floor, struggling for control. The false human helmet dislodged, revealing the reptilian features of a Krell warrior. Its yellow eyes burned with hatred as it tried to bring its weapon to bear. Susan locked the creature's arm, using its own momentum against it. A technique from Earth's ancient martial arts proved effective against even alien physiology. With a precise strike to a vulnerable joint, she disabled the attacker. The Krell warrior collapsed, its weapon clattering to the floor. The queen moved forward, standing over the fallen attacker, her imposing height casting a shadow across its form. "You have failed," she announced, her translator, conveying cold authority. "Your deception is exposed. Both our governments now know the truth." The remaining attackers suddenly retreated, falling back through the breached doorway. On the tactical display, the enemy ship detached from the Vespid vessel, breaking orbit and accelerating rapidly. "They run," Susan observed, helping a wounded Vespid soldier to his feet. The queen watched the display, her color patterns shifting to colors Susan interpreted as satisfaction and relief. "Let them run. The evidence has been transmitted. Their masters will disavow them. The Krell government will claim these were rogue elements acting without official sanction." Susan nodded. "The same tactic they tried to use against us, claiming humans had gone rogue." The communication system chimed with multiple incoming transmissions. Earth Command requesting. Emergency Communication Officer Zith announced. Vespid High Council also signaling. The Queen gestured for the channels to be opened. The main view screen split, showing Captain Laura Winters of Earth Command and Elder Zithvak of the Vespid High Council. "Your Majesty," Captain Winters began. "We received your evidence transmission. Our analysts confirm the attackers were using stolen human equipment, but were not human. The Krell ambassador is being summoned for questioning." Elder Zithvak clicked rapidly, his translator converting. "Are you injured, my queen?" "The home fleet has been dispatched to your location." The queen stood tall, her color patterns displaying strength and dignity. "I am unharmed thanks to the quick thinking and bravery of my human guard, Susan Parker." She moved closer to Susan, who recognized the deception and helped expose it. Susan felt the weight of attention from both screens, but maintained her professional composure. "I was simply performing my duty to protect Her Majesty and the peace between our species." Captain Winters smiled broadly. "Specialist Parker will receive full commendation for her actions. This incident could have sparked a war. Instead, it has exposed our true adversaries and demonstrated the value of our alliance." Elder Zithvak made a gesture Susan recognized as formal respect. "The High Council agrees the Human Vespid Treaty has proven its worth this day." As the communications continued, Susan realized that what had begun as a trial assignment had become something much more significant. The attempted deception had failed. Instead of driving humans and Vespids apart, it had brought them closer together. Her role as the Queen's Guard now symbolized more than diplomatic courtesy. It represented the bridge between two vastly different species united against common threats. The Queen turned to Susan when the transmissions ended, her compound eyes reflecting the human in countless facets. "We have much to discuss, Guard Parker. But first we must tend to repairs and wounded." Susan nodded in agreement, her respect for the alien monarch growing even stronger. The future would bring new challenges, but humans and Vespids would face them together. One full Earth month had passed since the attack. Susan stood on the observation deck of the newly repaired Vespid royal vessel, watching as the blue-green sphere of Earth grew larger in the view screen. The diplomatic mission that had begun in crisis was now concluding in triumph. The Queen moved silently to stand beside Susan, her massive form casting a long shadow across the deck. "Your world looks peaceful from here, Guard Parker." Susan nodded. "It does, Your Majesty. Though like your world, it has known its share of conflicts. The attempted deception by the Krell had backfired spectacularly. Instead of driving humans and Vespids into war, it had cemented their alliance. Both governments had responded with unprecedented cooperation, sharing intelligence about Krell activities throughout the sector. Joint patrols now secured trade routes and colony worlds. Susan had remained at her post as the Queen's personal guard throughout the diplomatic tour of 3 human colonies. The sight of a human protector standing beside the Vespid monarch had become a powerful symbol of interspecies cooperation. You seem contemplative, human. The Queen's translator clicked softly. Susan turned to face the towering insectoid ruler. I was thinking about how differently things might have gone if we hadn't discovered the truth, if our species had turned against each other. The Queen's color patterns shifted to a thoughtful blue. Her compound eyes reflected the stars and planets beyond the view screen. There are those among both our kinds who would have welcomed such conflict. She acknowledged species who fear difference often prefer destruction to cooperation. Susan had encountered such attitudes even among her own colleagues. Some had questioned her loyalty when she was first assigned to guard an alien queen. Now those same voices had fallen silent in the face of her commendation from Earth. "Command, Your Majesty." Susan began carefully. "When I was first assigned to you, I saw it as a duty to my government. Now I see it differently." "How so?" The Queen tilted her massive head, her antennae quivering with interest. "I understand now that what we are building between our species is more important than any single government or individual." Susan explained it. "Is about the future, about what we can accomplish together despite our differences, perhaps even because of them." The Queen's color patterns shifted to a warm gold that Susan had come to recognize as approval. "You speak wisdom, Guard Parker. It is precisely these insights that made you valuable beyond your protective skills." A soft chime indicated they were approaching Earth orbital space. Soon, they would dock with the International Diplomatic Station, where representatives from 27 human nations waited to formally welcome the Vespid Queen. The first such visit in recorded history. "There is something I wish to discuss before we arrive," the Queen said, her translator clicking with what Susan recognized as slight hesitation. "My tour of human worlds concludes today." Susan nodded respectfully. "Of course, Your Majesty. You return to the Vespid Collective tomorrow as scheduled." The Queen moved closer, her towering form casting Susan in shadow. "I have requested that you continue your assignment as my personal guard for an extended term. The formal request has been submitted to your Earth Command." Susan felt a surge of surprise and honor. Such an assignment was unprecedented. Earth Command would see the diplomatic value immediately, but the personal implications for Susan were significant years potentially. Among the Vespids learning their ways, representing humanity in the heart of alien society. "Your Majesty." "I am honored beyond words," Susan replied. "But may I ask why you have requested this specifically?" The Queen's mandibles moved in what Susan had learned was a gesture of amusement. "You still do not see what is obvious. Guard Parker. You possess a quality rare among both our species, the ability to truly see the other, not as a curiosity or a threat, but as an equal different yet valuable." Susan considered the Queen's words. She had never thought of her approach as unusual. It had simply seemed natural to observe and learn to find common ground, despite physical and cultural differences there. "Is a Vespid concept," the Queen continued, "difficult to translate, but approximately meaning one who bridges worlds. There has not been such a designation applied to a non-Vespid in our recorded history. Until now." Susan realized the significance of what the Queen was saying. This was not merely a diplomatic posting, but a fundamental shift in how the Vespids viewed humanity, or at least one human. "Your government has approved the request." The Queen added her color patterns, shifting to satisfied purple. "Your new designation begins upon completion of this mission." Susan straightened to attention, feeling the weight of responsibility and opportunity. "I will serve both our species to the best of my ability, Your Majesty." The Queen's antennae quivered slightly. "Not as a servant, Susan Parker, but as a bridge bearer. You will have authority among my people equal to a hive coordinator. You will help shape the future of our cooperation." Before Susan could respond, the communication system activated. Captain Laura Winters appeared on the screen. "Your Majesty, Specialist Parker. We are ready to begin docking procedures. The reception committee awaits at Airlock 7. The Queen acknowledged the message, then turned back to Susan. "We will speak more of your new role after the diplomatic functions. But know this. What began as a simple guard assignment has evolved into something neither of our species anticipated. You have shown that human adaptability and perspective combined with Vespid order and community create something greater than either alone. Susan walked beside the Queen toward the docking bay where history awaited them. The path ahead would not be easy. Cultural misunderstandings and lingering prejudices would challenge the alliance. But Susan now understood her unique position to help both species see beyond their differences as they approached the airlock. Susan reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From diplomatic security officer to bridge between worlds, she could not have imagined such a future when she first stood nervously outside the Queen's chamber 1 month ago. The massive doors slid open, revealing the reception area beyond humans. In formal attire stood alongside Vespid representatives, their differences stark yet their purpose united. The Queen paused at the threshold, her compound eyes taking in the historic scene. Ready, Guard Parker, she clicked her translator, conveying anticipation. Susan stood tall beside her alien queen. Ready, Your Majesty. Together, they stepped forward into a future neither of their ancestors could have imagined, human and Vespid side by side, not as conqueror and conquered, but as partners in the vast unknown universe. Beyond the airlock lay challenges and opportunities, discoveries and dangers. But they would face them together, their differences becoming their greatest strength. The story of Susan Parker and Queen Zixara was just beginning, but already it had changed the course of 2 civilizations. Their unlikely partnership had shown both species that the greatest achievements come not from conquest or isolation, but from the courage to reach across the divide and recognize the value in those most different from ourselves. As Susan took her place in the diplomatic procession, she caught the reflection of herself standing beside the towering insectoid Queen Human and Vespid, together forging a path that neither could walk alone.